Today is a good day to talk about Caracas in Venezuela. It's an important city in Venezuela, and it has over 3 million people, and it is absolutely big. There are a lot of neighborhoods and all that. But of course, being that such a big city, when you compare that, it is also the capital. That helps because then it's just one of those things. And the funny thing is that despite over 7 million people having left the country since the economic problem started, the city continues to grow. So people keep moving there, showing you that it has a lot of potential. But then when you look at daily life, and you see people, queuing for snacks on the streets of Venezuela, in the center especially, it doesn't feel as probably unsafe as most people would like to believe. For example, you see the price of empanadas and other food here, cafe, and most prices are between, say, just about 90 cents, 80 cents to about $2 for most meals that you get on the street. And then you just see people hustling, opening businesses. And when you look at the situation, like you see people setting up their stands, for example, a stand for sunglasses, and it says like for $1 to $3, and maybe it's just a bit under $5 for some of those things. Yeah, and this is another thing where you see made in China, and made in China is good for a lot of countries. Of course, it has its own issues, but then that is a conversation for another time. But the interesting thing when you walk around the center of Caracas is that in the center feels clean. Even if it's raining or if there is sunshine, the center is clean. And if you're coming from outside, you read a lot about chaos, or you even read about, oh, don't go to Venezuela because, a lot of things happen there. Yeah, that is true, but what sometimes you need to put into perspective is that it's just like when you go to London or Paris. There are neighborhoods you shouldn't go to, no matter if it's a developed country or not. Even if the economy is booming, it just means that a lot of people, there are some neighborhoods that are just safe, and other neighborhoods you just think, well, never mind. And the center, of course, of the city being the center, it would have more security. You have more police patrol. You would have more resources. Basically, people with the means to live in a center with high buildings like this, they are there and they are able to just lead a normal life. And I think sometimes when you see refugees from Venezuela traveling around Central America, and you see them, and those are probably the most fortunate ones, because those who don't even have the means cannot even leave the country, and you often don't see them in places like this in the center. And when you think about this, the center here just looks normal, buses, people going around. You don't feel unsafe here, but that doesn't mean there are no issues in the country, and I think that is something that needs to be taken into consideration. Now let's talk about some of the biggest problems that the country is facing, or the city, put it that way, is facing, because not everyone, as I said, has issues or is suffering. One of the biggest issues that a lot of people actually worry about is money, and the fact that a lot of people are unable to make ends meet is a big problem. And so, for example, you get a moment of stability where the economy is stable, there's enough food for everyone, and that you see on the streets of Caracas in the center. You see, it's nice, it's clean, people go around, people still go to church because you still need God, as you can see here, and you pray for a miracle. And look at this church, it's absolutely immaculate, and it's clean. So daily life goes on. But then, when there's economic stability or political stability, life goes on. People find a way to be resilient, and to make money. But there have been, but when there's an election, someone's not happy, and then it just goes out of it. Basically, insecurity goes up because it's just the way things are. So people often complain about violent crime and insecurity, which is a normal thing. And part of that is also because of the economic situation that a lot of people have experienced in the city over the years. It has been said that in some neighborhoods that extortion, kidnappings are rather normal. And if you live in a neighborhood like that, it just makes it very difficult for you. Because if you have a little store, it's just like when the mafia in New York started, or in Sicily, where you have your store, you need to pay the extortion fee, or else they'll destroy your business. So it just means that the little amount of money you're making, it just becomes much more difficult to make ends meet. So that is one problem that people actually are facing. And if you're well-to-do, which means you're not really suffering from the economic hardship, you also have to worry about being kidnapped by people and say, okay, if you want your father, if you want your son, you need to pay us, or else you never see them again. So it means even when you're well-to-do, life is not always easy, because you're constantly being paranoid of something happening to you or something happening to your family members. And that is why a lot of people actually move to better neighborhoods. So that is, for example, it is said neighborhoods to avoid Petare. It is one of the largest barrios in Latin America. It has over about 300,000 people. It's big. And it's funny actually that some cities will say, oh, we have 300,000 people, but this is just a neighborhood. It is just packed, high density neighborhood, but filled with a lot of crime. And even locals say, don't go there. Not unless you're a YouTuber, then you go there, film, and then show people what life is like on the inside. Anyway, and then you have the 23rd of Enero, which is the 23rd of January. Don't go there. Lakota 905, people say, don't go there. But then, like always, the center, because it has more security police presence, you can go there. You can go and have a good time there. That's not a problem. Okay, so as you can see here, more food, empanadas. I think, like in most Latin American countries, when you see arepas, empanadas, and all these, those are staple food. And you can see these are not packed, unlike maybe the snacks on the street, for the simple reason that not everyone can afford that, even if you have a job. Anyway, it's just something I noticed there. Anyway, let's go back to the story of the neighborhoods. It says also that, for example, the nicer ones, like the Los Chorros, Las Mercedes, and El Cafetal, those are really nice ones and have lower crime and are popular among experts and diplomats. Go and figure. It just seems, it almost sounds like Kensington and Chelsea in London, where that is where you go, or in Paris, some arrondissement where all the rich people are. It's just the way. Basically, Caracas is the same thing. And they say if you go to Chacao, it's got better infrastructure, better police presence. Yeah, go figure. So basically, it's just the way things are. And when you have a street like that, when you have things like that, it is not great for normal people who can't afford it. Someone said, I don't know how true that is, that in Caracas, with over 3 million people, and then when you compare that to all the other Maracaibo, which is 2 million, Maracay, Valencia, these are massive cities. And now, if you wonder why it is very difficult for people, is that not a lot of people have money. So they're able to move to nicer neighborhoods. So their experience in life, they would always go outside of the country, go and visit and come back. They could afford to do that. So not everyone is actually leaving. But then in the mid-2010s, when millions of people left, the problem is this, that you need to basically be courageous and really want to survive to be able to do that. And desperation means a lot of people actually do leave. And so, what does that mean for the country? Some people say that we earn so little that we can't afford to 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 live in the nice areas. Put it that way. For example, it says if you want to everyday expenses, for example, to have a good life in Caracas, meals $6 to $20. But then we're talking about normal meals. But then when you look at the empanadas, they're like $1 to $2 or $3. You get a snack meal for less than $5, and you're able to you continue your day. But then when you go to restaurants and people paying 6 to 20, that is a lot. And then you have milk, eggs. People are saying eggs is expensive, bread is not cheap. But depending on, of course, where you live and where you're shopping, everything closer to the center will be a bit more expensive. And then if you go to the barrios, the more neighborhood where life is a bit cheaper, and life is also cheaper, if you understand what I mean. So it can be very difficult. But as you can see here, there are a lot of people surviving despite some of the issues facing the country, the city. For example, it is said that a lot of people would earn maybe, say, $200 to $300. If you're professional, you could earn more than that. If you're probably higher management, you could almost get up to 1,000, and that is decent. But the funny thing is that when you say decent, almost 1,000, but then it says even that most people with good jobs can't afford to live in the city. And that just means it's just absolutely mind-blowing that the cost of living outpace the amount of money that people are paid rent. For example, if you have a family of say 4 people, rent can be rather expensive, well over $1,000, $2,000. And I'm like, wow, in Caracas that expensive? Yeah, it is that expensive. And then does it mean there are people who are able to pay for that? Yes, as well. It means people are able to pay for that. As you can see, people have cars, people have really fancy cars. It's a big city, 300 million people, but then you have buses like this one as well. And people getting on buses, and those are much cheaper. You also have Uber, and it's just to weigh things up. You have Uber, all these ride share. So you have all these facilities in the city, but unfortunately, not everyone is able to profit from it. Because how can you manage to live if your salary is, say, $300, $500 per month, and the rent alone takes up all the salary? So it just seems what people have been doing is this, that the 7 million people who have left, those who are able to make it now help families. I mean, look at the guy. You're in a bus, someone is selling things. I don't know what he's selling. So basically hustle. So sometimes it's not unusual for people to have multiple jobs. So they probably have one job over the week, and on the weekends people have other jobs, and then you're in a bus. That's a means of transportation because, well, it is more affordable. You're able to go to work and come back. So you have people doing that. And another thing is that a lot of Venezuelans, the migration, like literally hundreds and thousands of people have been able to make it to the US. Others have gone to Brazil, others have gone to Lima in Peru, or Colombia. All these other places, people have gone there, and those who have been successful in starting a life for themselves over there, then start sending money back to the country to help their family members. And that is how some people survive. The funny thing is that people just assume that if you send money back home, as they say, then it's enough to feed your family. Most people, if you're in the US, you're a new immigrant, it takes years basically to get started. It takes years to get settled in the city. And then if you're illegal, then you're constantly afraid that you might get sent back. And if you're fortunate to get, residency and refugee status, you get a job, you're really successful, then maybe just sending $100 or $200 to family back in Caracas is probably not a lot in the bigger scheme of things. But then you say, oh, by the way, this is someone selling or buying gold. I don't know. Anyway, there's business anyway. So let's get back to the story. More food, by the way. So when you see this, how much are those? Okay, $2-3. Yeah, that's how much they cost. Yeah. Okay. Never mind. So the story here is that when you send those money, you send $200 home. What it does is that people already struggling. It helps them to basically survive the end of the month, and after a while they end up depending on that, because then you work and then you get the remittance from families abroad. It helps, so people are able to survive, and that is what most people do in Caracas. Now, that, of course, that says there are professionals, there are experts, there are, well, I would surmise that there are millionaires in Venezuela, because it's just the way things are. Every country has one of those, and then it's just the struggle and the plight of people being rich and then people being poor. Is just like the wage divide is just so big that people, even professionals, are struggling. So anyway, it just goes to show that the life is quite hard for a lot of people. But that said, something someone also said is this, that compared to what it was before, it is much better now, and it is less chaotic. And I thought, well, okay, that is a good thing. That is good, because if it's more stable, that means probably the worst is over, and now what you need to do is rebuild yourself, your life, and that is a good thing. And I think if you're able to go in that direction, then you would see more progress, and probably those in the diaspora would probably move back, and some of the skills they've gained abroad, they'll be able to bring it back and help the country. So yeah, I think from that perspective, it is good. That said, people still come to Venezuela. I mean, tourism is still something interesting. It's still big. Even like people in diaspora in other places still visit Venezuela. They visit home, and probably some have their projects building homes in Caracas. And then the idea is that once I have enough, I'll be able to move back, start a business, and lead a normal life. So the hustle is still ongoing, and people are still collaborating with each other, doing informal jobs, I don't know, babysitting, anything you can do. And you can see that spirit in the market when you go around the market. I'm not talking about the big stores, selling high-end products, but you look at all the smaller stores around the city center. There's just so many of those out there, and that helps a lot of people. Now, what else is there that people actually, when tourism come and tourists are worried about what is life like? Most people say, don't come to Caracas. There are other places you could go to, but that is true. But then there are other things people say you could do. If you come, there are a lot of things to see. You just need to use common sense, avoid certain areas, because that's what locals do, so you don't want to go there. And another thing you need to do is that there are things you could still enjoy as a tourist when you come to Caracas. So it's not all doom and gloom. But I think a lot of the things that people actually, a lot of the tourists when they come to Caracas, is that it is expensive. I know it is rather shocking, but it is rather expensive. All right, when I say expensive, it's not like London, Paris expensive, but it's like, like the lady sitting here selling her things, those are little commerce, but in general, what she's selling is probably cheaper than what you get in the stores. But in general, people say, well, it's Venezuela. People say there's poverty, so I would expect it to be cheaper. And then you get there, it's not cheap, and people are like, why is it not cheap? Well, because there's a higher demand for products. There's a big population, and just that it. And just that people don't have enough money to afford the good things, and you can't just reduce the price so that more people could afford it, but because then you go bankrupt as well, because, well, import and all that. Anyway, now let's talk about tourism in the country. So when we talk about tourists and tourists visiting Venezuela, it's not that much, unfortunately. About 90,000 visiting Caracas alone, but most of these people are just, visiting families or people returning from wherever they've been. So or internal tourism, people from other regions visiting the area. So it's just what it is. It's not. I was actually expecting there to be more people visiting, but I think also the news. The way some of the local situation is exaggerated, makes it very hard for people to be convinced to visit. And so anyway, so that's one of the realities here of, what is cachapa? The funny thing is, when you look at the names of some of this is hamburguesa, okay, that's everyone knows what that is, but Caracas seems to have like other things, chuleta. Okay, that would be meat. But anyway, there are other forms of meals that you see in Latin America that probably Venezuela has its own version of that. Anyway, let's get back to the story. So of tourism. So it's very few people are actually visiting because of the story of crime and instability, and so tourism isn't really very high. But people who know what's happening would say, yeah, go and do this and avoid this. So most of the places that people always visit are always the same thing, unfortunately. There is the attractions like the Avila National Park, the Natal de Libertador, Paseo de los Próceres, Mercado de Chacao. Okay, and then it's got the nightlife. But then all these things, street food, empanadas, but all these things, people are saying, if you want to go, you can go there, but it's not, you're not going there for the beach or for all these other things, but there are interesting things to do if you're one of those tourists who is not going to go and sit in a resort and just chillax and enjoy your cocktail. And the whole thing is that if you're going to do that, just go to the nice areas, basically, like Altamira, and avoid traveling at night, and always carry cash with you. If you're going to visit Caracas, cash, because even in some cases, your ATM, Visa, MasterCard might not work at the ATM, or you might not even be able to pay with those. So that's what you need to be worried about. And also common sense, like, don't start showing off that you have a lot of money. It's not good. And the way you dress as well, just basically look at the normal people on the streets here, the way they're dressed. It's just normal, what you would see in most cities. If you're like that, it's easier to blend in. But sometimes if they look at your face, they probably know you're not from here. So just one of those things. Something else that a lot of people actually forget is insurance. I think travel insurance sometimes is neglected, but it helps if you get sick, if something happens to you, you need to get repatriated. It can be rather expensive. So, and also, if you learn a bit of Spanish, hola, me llamo, mi casa es su casa, whatever that's supposed to mean in some cases. But anyway, so basically, you would have a good time apparently if you just stick to the more popular side and don't try to be an adventurer, pioneer, going into places that you shouldn't go to. Anyway, so as you can see here, I think for me, Caracas just looks like a big city. It's got places, it's clean, people are just doing their own thing, and it's all normal. So I think, sometimes I would say the news actually makes it a bit more worse than it actually is. And part of the reason is that when you sensationalize things, it gets a lot of engagement. People are riled up. People are like, oh, this is bad. Oh, then basically a lot of misinformation. But then there's also the other reality that not everything is misinformation. Sometimes people do struggle, there is crime, but the context also matters, that not everything is bad, and that is important.